March 15, 1936, Cimarron County, Oklahoma. The land had been dying for 2 years. Not fast, not dramatic, slow and quiet the way a man dies when he stops eating. Just a gradual fading like color bleeding out of old cloth left too long in the sun. The wheat that once grew tall and golden across 320 acres now lay brown and withered, strangled by roots that shouldn't have been there, choked by soil that had forgotten how to
Easy
hold
now,
life.
ladies.
Marcus Thornwell stood
That's it,
knee-deep
settle
in the
down.
south field mud, sucking at his boots. Dirt caked under his fingernails and crusted along his wrists. 35 years old, widower, drunk more days than sober, the kind of man who'd stopped shaving because mirrors had become unbearable. He couldn't remember the last time this land had cared about anything he planted. The wagon crested the hill around 10, maybe 10:30 in the morning. He heard it before he saw it, axle screaming that sound horses make when they want you to know they're not happy about the road wheels hitting ruts that hadn't seen a shovel in 2 years or more. Wagons used to pass twice a week headed for Millbrook. Sometimes they'd stop. Not anymore. Marcus had fixed that. 2 full years of dodging every invitation, pretending he didn't see people wave, letting his fence deteriorate so completely that even the rope and nail seller steered clear. But this wagon stopped. The driver was thin-faced and bureaucratic, the kind of man who pressed folders to his chest like they were children or scripture, depending on who you asked. Settlement Bureau for Domestic Arrangements. He flipped a page. Number 347, one bride. Working age, payment rendered 7 months forward. Marcus felt his chest constrict suddenly, violently. He'd written the letter drunk. 4 days into a Duran's brandy, Bender winter so quiet the walls practically hummed from it. His heartbeat pounding hard like an accusation, like someone tapping a finger on a desk saying, well, what now? He'd canceled it. Sent 2 letters. The correspondence went through Helena. He had nothing on file. The thin man jumped down from the seat, pulled back the canvas. What came out of that wagon wasn't what Marcus Thornwell had ordered. Wasn't what any man in his right mind would have ordered. She was tall, 6 feet, maybe 6'1". Her hand reached over the wagon rail, easy even bent forward the way she was, shoulders curving inward like she was trying to take up less space on the planet. Her skin had that gray-toned quality, like river stones after rain sun-weathered and wind-beaten until the color itself seemed uncertain. And her jaw. God, her jaw, swollen, bruised, purple-black, from cheekbone down to neck, those heavy, brutal angles that didn't exist in any normal human skull. Dustwalker, that's what they called them. The nomad tribes that somehow survived when the dust came, when the topsoil blew away, and took civilized farming with it. The ones who read the land like prophets, who touched the soil with bare hands and called it sacred. One of her eyes was swollen completely shut. The left one, well, her lower lip was torn, stitched poorly with thread that looked like it came from a feed sack. She wore a dress that might have been brown originally, but road dust had turned it into something colorless and defeated. Her hands hung at her sides, fingers pointing in directions they shouldn't point, twisted wrong enough that Marcus's own hands started aching in sympathy. Her left wrist wore an iron band. Tribal markings heavily scratched the metal and flesh, both scraped raw, like she'd spent hours rubbing it against whatever rock she could find. She just stood there in the mud and everything looking at him with the one eye that worked. No plea for help, no emotion on her face at all. Just patient, blank. Like a calculator behind those eyes, precisely measuring exactly how bad this situation was going to get. Marcus looked at the thin man. This ain't what I ordered. The driver pushed envelope 347 toward him. Human stock's dry now, Bureau policy. They can substitute equivalents. Dustwalker females equal 1.3 in human labor units. Way I see it, you're winning. On paper, maybe. The contracts were all in there. Her name on page 2 if that was something he cared about. The man was already hurrying back to his seat. Most folks don't care. Just being straight with you. He paused. Good luck, Mr. Thornwell. Done. The wagon faded gradually until the valley swallowed it. Hard wind cutting through the withered wheat stalks. A crow on a fence post having a pointless argument with the scout. 2 people standing in a muddy field with not one useful word to say between them. Marcus tore open the envelope. Mr. Thornwell, here's what you're getting. 1 dustwalker, female age range 25 to 30, agricultural bride class. Physical notes. Strong build, working muscles, some cosmetic damage at time of delivery. See waiver form for details. Origin from Bashkari tribe in Eastern Territory. Surrendered by tribal leadership. Why disciplinary violations? Financial situation settled. The Bureau thanks you for choosing us. Disciplinary violations. He read that 3 times. Got heavier each time. She was still standing there. Hadn't moved an inch. The mud was creeping over her boots, slow like the earth itself was trying to swallow her. The wind pushed her hair around, dark course cut too short, cut by someone who didn't care about the result. You understand what I'm saying, he tried. Her voice came out rough and low, almost scraping her chest. Better than you understand that field you're talking about. The common tongue was sharp, clear, no stutter at all, and that slight rasp. He couldn't help himself looking at the ruined wheat. Yeah, she had him there. She spoke common and she looked shell-shocked. So was he. Yeah. So you don't know many dust walkers? Don't know any. Her face changed. Not a smile, her lip was too torn for smiling, but something. Now you know one. He asked her name. What's the paper say? It says Nara. No surname. They don't use surnames. Tribal name was enough, she said, jaw tightening. Before. The past was enough. Listen. Marcus said, I didn't order a dust walker for this mess. I'll contact the bureau, have them place you proper. Already paid. Money's gone. They don't refund. No bitterness. Nothing. Just that perfectly clear understanding of how the machine eats people, coming from someone who'd been through it herself. And she was right. 12 silver dollars evaporated. Can you work? The words came out rougher than he meant, harsher. Can you lift your chin toward that drowned wheat? Because that field says absolutely not. Under the irritation, something moved. Felt like respect, and he hated it. The barn, he said. You'll sleep there for now till I figure this out. Fine by me. Not putting you there because you're dust walker. Because it's a barn, that's why. I've had worse. She bent down, picked up her cloth bundle. One bundle, that's all. An entire life wrapped in rags. Where he pointed, she walked. The barn was standing at least. 3 goats that were mostly antisocial. Brick, a plow horse named for what he had instead of personality. And a flock of chickens operating under some kind of internal government. Marcus had given up trying to decode about a year and a half ago. He brought a blanket before dark. She was sitting on a hay bale watching the chickens, studying them almost. Blanket for you, he said. Night gets cold. I understand blankets. Millbrook east the house. Outhouse behind the woodshed. Understood. She ate alone. Potato soup from the stores. Ate half of it, then just sat there watching it cool. 12 silver dollars. He ladled soup into a bowl, took it out, set it beside the barn door. Didn't knock, just left. Morning. The bowl sat full in the exact spot he'd left it. He replaced it with porridge. Noon, the porridge there. Leftover bread, a strip of dried meat. On the second evening, it broke him. She was picking wild garlic from behind the barn, eating alone. She wouldn't take his food because of pride. Maybe dust walkers had a word for that. That feeling that makes you'd rather starve than owe anything to anyone, and especially to a strange white man who technically owns you on paper. Night 3. Bowl by the door, soup. He put more bread in it than usual. Morning. The bowl was on the step, clean completely. She'd wiped it like she owed it money. He picked up that bowl and felt something unlock in his ribcage, something that had been wound tight without him noticing. Maybe for weeks. Maybe much longer. Day 4, dawn. Frost everywhere. Dead wheat covered white pale snow the color of bone, which meant the sun didn't want to be here either. He walked out to the barn. Nobody there. She was in the field. His field. Kneeling in the mud. One hand that still sort of worked, pulling up dead root. That goddamn vine. That cursed creeping thing that had been strangling his wheat for 2 straight years. She'd already cleared a patch the size of a small room. Broken fingers covered in dirt, the swelling turned from purple to this ugly yellow-green that somehow looked worse. What the hell you doing? She didn't look up. Using your eyes. You're out here at dawn with broken hands digging in my field. So your eyes work. Good. Wish your soil did. She pulled another one out. Dead root. It had been here 2, maybe 3 seasons. Minimum, choking everything trying to grow. I know what dead root is. Do you? She looked back. Sunrise threw shadows on her ruined face, half of it smashed, half of it sharp as a razor blade, all of it unimpressed. Because your field disagrees. You need to rest. Rest's for people who still got something to lose. She went back to the hard work. I'm in bad shape, so I work. Your fingers are literally broken. Yeah, and they're mine. So go to a healer. I want this weed gone before it blooms. You understand that 3 more vines, bang, bang, bang. Practiced is breathing. Healer ain't going anywhere. Dead root is. He stood there watching, then he bent down. His knees hit the mud and he started pulling alongside her. A full hour passed with nothing but the sound of roots coming out of wet soil. The pile grew. His knees screamed. She never slowed once, never stopped. Barely seemed to register he was there, except that one time she jerked her chin toward a patch he'd missed. "Done this before?" he asked. "Dustwalker Farm." "Not aware of it. White folks don't know much about us." "We don't know much about you either." She wiped her face with mud clearing, sweat and bruises and everything. "That's where wars come from, mostly." "We ain't at war." "No, we're pulling weeds." Wyatt showed up that evening. Closest neighbor by any measure. 62 years old, face like someone had crumpled a map and tried to smooth it out. He had opinions, and he handed them out like free samples at market, whether you were hungry or not. He also had this unsettling talent for appearing without warning at exactly the worst possible moment, a skill he'd been polishing for decades. His horse stopped at the fence. He stared. "That a dust walker in your wheat, in what used to be my wheat, yeah." He climbed down off the horse, that slow way you know the way when a man needs to think before his feet touch ground. Bureau bride situation, bureau failure situation, big difference. He watched Nara work. Like asking for a plow horse and they send you a war elk instead. Stronger, sure. Technically superior animal. Makes dinner conversation different, though. Can't return her. Store policy. $12. Wyatt gave a low whistle. "While we're counting dollars, you didn't get Aldrich was in Millbrook last week asking about your harvest." Vincent Aldrich, the merchant, the man who held the note. 2 years running, he'd extended Marcus credit against crops that never came profitable, and you could feel that man's patience running thin. "Pay him when I harvest." "Harvest what, Marcus?" Wyatt gestured at the field. "I see mud. I see dead roots. I see a dustwalker woman. Can't sell mud. Can't sell dead roots. Can't sell Northfield." He paused. "Half what you planted 12 months ago was half the year before that." Wyatt turned, looked Marcus directly in the eyes. "I knew Eleanor. Good woman, Marcus. Great woman. But you buried the farm with her. 2 years. 2 years you've watched land die because you couldn't imagine life without her. Let this stand. Aldrich wants full payment, called in." "He can't take my farm." "Default can. He's got paper for $380 in your name." The number sat between them like a stone. 8 weeks to harvest, Wyatt said. "You don't bring enough." "Yeah, public auction." Behind them, Nara was pulling dead roots like it had insulted her mother. The pile was massive. A quarter of the south plot cleared in what, 5 hours, 6 broken hands, maybe cracked ribs, working with this terrifying efficiency that made 2 years of Marcus sitting idle look like a personal insult to the topsoil. "She worth the trouble?" Wyatt asked. "Knows the difference between dead root and wheat, which puts her ahead of me now." "That's the bar, is it?" He climbed back up. "You need a miracle, Marcus. Usually I'd tell you to pray for it, but seems like God or whoever lost this valley's address." One last look at Nara. "Maybe sent the better replacement." He rode off. Evening came. Nara was on the porch step. She'd never gone inside the house, not once, never crossed that line, but she was on the step leaning against the wood post, her hands resting on her knees. Those hands. Marcus set a bowl beside her, went to the far end. Quiet settled in, not the bad kind. The kind that happens when two people pull the same weeds from the same soil all day long, and neither one has the energy to do anything but be tired. After a while, she spoke. "Northfield, what did you plant?" "Wheat, some oats." "When is 6 weeks back?" "Wheat's done, maybe the oats survive." "Southfield, Southfield." She looked out at it. "We'll clear the dead roots by week's end. Turn the soil. Still time left for late planting. Turnips, hardy greens. No money in grain, but you'll get real food from real land." He looked at her hands, at that careful, crooked grip, the way her fingers moved in the wrong directions. "You'll do that yourself." She looked at his hands. Not fast, not cruel, but she looked at those hands. They still had calluses, but they'd gotten thinner, worn down from months and months of not doing what hands were made for. "Not with broken fingers." "You can't. Try me." 3 years, her voice came out dry, nothing behind it, no self-pity, just measurement like she was reading the weather. 3 years of breaking and healing wrong, and breaking again. My hands work. Work bad, but they work. 3 years for a sample. From who, why's it matter, matters to me. That's why. There was a sound, a goat or an owl somewhere in the dark. Her voice came finally. "My tribal chief, I was doing something not allowed." "What's that, growing things?" She almost laughed saying it, almost. "Herbs, healing plants. Back home, that kind of work, hands in dirt, and planting, that ain't for us. Dustwalker women shameful ones. They're only good for fighting and making more dustwalkers. If someone sees you growing a garden, they look at you strange and break your hands because of it. She flexed her crooked fingers, then straightened them. Broke them because I didn't stop when he told me stop. Marcus set his bowl on the step. I won't break your hands. I know. How you know that? Because you brought soup to the barn door for 3 straight nights while the person inside didn't even touch it. She stood up slowly. Everything about her was careful and slow, and you could tell every movement had a cost. Where I come from, if someone keeps showing up and they ain't there to hurt you, it's either pathetic or it's kind. You ain't pathetic. She headed toward the barn, reached the door, stopped without turning. Southfield, tomorrow I'll show you what the soil asked for. The door closed. Marcus sat on that porch in the dark with the night farm sounds around him, and he sat there thinking about broken hands and gardens that people got punished for, and about these strange, ugly calculations of what you owe. What you owe to a merchant holding a ledger, what you owe to someone who eats on the 3rd night what you made for them. Morning came smelling of turned earth. Nara was in Southfield already, but she wasn't pulling weeds this time. She was on the ground. Literally on the ground, hands spread out, face about 6 inches from the soil, eyes closed. Completely still as stone. She looked like someone praying, but stranger, like she was listening to something underneath. What you doing? Quiet. He stood there holding a shovel in his own field, feeling like an intruder on his own land. And she stayed like that for a full minute. At least then she gathered a handful of soil, crumbled it with her broken fingers, lifted it to her nose, breathed in, opened her eyes. Your water table shifted. What now? Groundwater, changed direction, moved east. Was running from here now, runs from here. She gestured. That's why the wheat choked. You planted where it was dry. Ain't anymore. Water goes where it wants. How you know that? She held up the crumbled soil. Soil told me. Here, smell this. He took it. Smelled like dirt, like iron, like clay. When water moves through deep earth, pulls iron with it. Wherever there's clay, composition changes. You should feel it. My nose smells dirt. Your nose smells nothing. She stood up, dusted off her knees. Soil keeps records. Every flood hit this field, every drought, every season someone decided to stop caring. It's all written there. You just got to learn to read it. Soil keeps records. She said it like Tuesday comes after Monday, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. All right then, so what do we do? Plant where the water is not where it was. She started walking the field. Here's the thing, barefoot. She'd left her boots somewhere, pressing her feet into the mud, every few steps, stopping, kneeling down, touching the ground. And I swear to God, at one point she took a bit of soil and tasted it, put it in her mouth, actually chewed it, spat it out. Marcus followed her, feeling less like he owned the land and more like a child following a teacher who might stop teaching any second. Here, she drew a line with her heel. Turnip land, soil's heavy enough to hold them. 20 paces east. Here, greens, scorched kale, actually needs the water. By the ditch. Nothing. Don't touch this patch. It's done, gave everything it had, you need to leave it alone. You're redesigning my entire field. Someone had to. This is my farm. You got the land. I got what the land needs, so you can argue about it or you can plant turnips. One of those feeds us when winter comes. He wanted to object. God, he wanted to. 2 years of making every decision himself, answering to nobody. But his wheat was dead in the ground, his soil was drained, and this woman was reading his field like someone turning pages in a book. Turnips, he said. Smart. 3 days of planting after that. The word brutal doesn't do it justice. Nara moved at a pace that gave no regard to his screaming muscles or her cracked ribs or anything else. She worked at an angle favoring her side, broken fingers wrapped in strips of cloth she'd torn from her only spare piece of clothing. The only backup thing she had, and she tore it up for bandages. That's who she was. And they argued. Lord, they argued about everything. Furrow depth. Deep enough for human seeds, sure. These are dustwalker turnips I traded with the wagon driver 3 days before he dropped me off here. Had seeds? I had a brass pin, that's economics. You plan this before you even got here. I plan everything. Planning's what keeps you alive when nothing else does. Irrigation angles wrong. She redug it. Compost ratios wrong. She fixed it. The goat schedule, chicken feed, seed storage. She gave a whole lecture on that one. Might as well hang a sign saying free food, every rat in the county will show up. One night, Marcus stood there, sweat soaked through his shirt, every muscle screaming, standing in a field that looked more alive than it had in 2 years, and both of them knew it. Anything else? Your fence is trash. Yeah, I know. Roof leaks on the east side. I know. The grain storage placement. I know, Nara. The question landed strange. Heavier than she'd intended, or maybe exactly as heavy as she intended? Hard to tell with her. Why hasn't anything been fixed? He was quiet for a long time. I'll fix the fence tomorrow. She stopped talking then. Didn't drill into why a man would spend 2 years watching life collapse without picking up a hammer. Maybe she'd seen it before, how losing someone turns you into a ghost that still eats and breathes but stops maintaining. Anything, stops patching holes. Lets the weather in. Night 7. The porch step was becoming a habit now. Neither had agreed to it, it just happened. The gravity of spending a whole day exhausting your body next to another person. He'd cooked better. Nara had found wild mint by the creek. He watched how she held the spoon, that careful, crooked grip, moving fingers bent in the wrong directions. Your hands. How old were you when it happened? First time 19. First time. Let that settle. Second was 21. The chief waited till they healed full first. The first one, he wanted me to understand it wasn't about anger. She stopped chewing. That was policy. The word policy landed like a slap on the table. What were you planting? She listed them like a soldier reciting her squad. Bone knit fever, wart blood, moss. My grandmother taught me all the old ways. She was last shaman before new chief came and banned everything. His motto, warriors don't need medicine. Weakness should die on its own healing. It is insult. And you kept going. People got sick, Marcus. Children especially. He set his bowl aside. So I'd plant secret at night, treat anyone who came. 3 years it worked. Then someone talked. Then what? Hands broken in front of the whole tribe. Kashavari public. She spoke that word like swallowing a rock. Her whole body stiffened. The soil you touch, lowest thing you can be. Lower than warrior, lower than breeder, lower than those who clean the waste pits. Then the bureau, not sold, punished by being handed to a white man. That's the worst shame there is. There is worse than killing me. She looked at him directly. Just in case you were wondering where white folks rank with dust walkers. Lower than waste pit cleaners, clear as sunlight. Something moved fast across her face. If you blinked, you missed it. Was that a joke? An attempt at a joke. Stick to field work. Marcus almost smiled. She definitely didn't. Almost. They sat there in the darkness, listening to a farm that was slowly like something beaten nearly to death. Opening one eye and saying, okay, but I don't trust this yet, coming back to something you could call alive. Week 2 arrived with morning frost and field work that left them both hollow-limbed by nightfall. Southfield got planted turnips in neat rows where Nara said the water ran deep, hardy greens along the irrigation channel. Northfield got assessed and deemed salvageable barely if they could nurse the oats along for another 6 weeks. Day 10, morning, kitchen table, a bundle of dried herbs. Beside it, a folded cloth with brown-green paste on it, smelling like forest. That's for your hands, Nara said, standing at the doorway, already half-turned to leave. Toenails crack split, you become useless. Rub it in before bed. She had this old habit of leaving. Don't die. That night it rained heavy. Not gentle rain, angry rain. The roof took a beating. The garden turned into a lake within an hour. Marcus sat by the fire thinking about whether the turnip seeds would wash out of the ground. A knock at the door. Quiet enough he almost imagined it. Nara on the porch, soaking wet, shivering, which he didn't think dustwalkers did. Barn's flooding. Get in here. She didn't move right away. This was the line. She'd never entered this house, never crossed that threshold, not once. The barn was hers. Inside the cottage was another world entirely, and they both felt it sitting in the air between them. Nara, get in. She came in, stood there dripping water like a hund on the floorboards. Her eyes swept the cottage in quick takes. The fireplace, the kitchen area, that table where they'd never sat together inside, and the closed bedroom door. Eleanor's door. Locked tight for 2 years. He handed her a blanket. She took it and sat on the floor by the fire, not in a chair. Chairs are for floors, fine. He made tea, last of what he had, sat across from her with his cup. The rain hammered everything outside like it was trying to make a point. Marcus. First time she'd used his actual name. Not Thornwell, not you, not white man. Marcus. Yeah, they're gonna send someone for me. He'd been waiting for this. Not openly, not where he was thinking, but deep down in that place where you know things you haven't admitted to yourself yet. A woman wearing a tribal iron band on her wrist doesn't just disappear. Someone's coming to look for her. These aren't the kind of people who process loss quietly. When, before winter, maybe sooner, fire reflected in her eyes that one good eye. My brother runs the search teams anyway. Thrackin. He ain't cruel, not like the chief, but he does what he's told. What happens if they find you here? I go back. Chief picks new punishment. Last I heard they were discussing blindness. Let her touch the soil, she don't need eyes. That was the logic. The words fell into the room like a stone down a well. No, Marcus said, that ain't happening. Can't promise things like that. Just did. You're one man on a broke farm with debt you can't pay. What exactly you planning to do when Dustwalker warriors show up at your fence? She looked at him long. Fire distorted her face, bruises fading to yellow, that sharp jaw, one eye still swollen, completely shut. She had the look of someone who'd been promised things before and memorized the exact weight of disappointment by heart. My grandmother used to say something. Her voice dropped, the voice people use when they're pulling memories from deep storage. Love between us, the soil remembers. She meant everything you do to the land stays in it. Every kindness, every wound, the soil keeps it all. Nothing's lost. The soil remembers. That was the second time he'd heard her say it. Different weight, but same words. This wasn't farming advice. This was about scars, about things done to people that get stored in the body. Stay there long after the brain tries to forget and move on. My wife used to say something like that, Marcus said quietly. Not about soil, about time. Said time doesn't actually heal. Just gives you space to build walls around the wound. Smart woman. She was. On that Nara tilted her head toward the bedroom, toward the closed door, toward whatever he kept locked in there. There, whatever you keep closed. He went completely still. I can smell the cedar chest. You oil it regular. I can tell that, but you never open that door when I'm near. There's things in there, I know. Silence filled it up. The rain, the fire crackling. You ain't got to show me nothing, but you ain't got to hide it either. Something moved in the room, and it wasn't the door. Something older than the door, internal, locked for 2 years and bolted tight with everything Marcus had. Nara slept by the fireplace, her blanket pressed against the wall, the way people sleep when they've learned to sleep ready. Morning came. The rain stopped. Southfield was a mess of mud, but the seeds held. Nara checked the animals, came back to the cottage, not to the barn. She was going to sleep here. If that was an offer, then it's an offer. Floor's fine. Second blanket, then better than fine. She moved her things that afternoon. One trip, one hand, one bundle. An entire life. Marcus stood in the main room thinking about his bedroom, crammed with Eleanor's things, her dresses, her books, that wooden comb she'd carved herself one winter when the snow kept them inside for a week. The quilt she'd been working on, half-finished needle, still stuck through fabric like she'd just set it down for a minute and would be back any moment. He didn't take anything out, just sat there breathing it in, cedar and lavender and cloth, the smell of a life that had ended without asking permission. Morning, 3 small sprigs of dried herbs on the chest lid tied with a piece of grass. What's this? Nara was at the stove stirring porridge for him. Ashkaphora, morning herb. You burn it when you're ready for the grief to move, not end. Moving don't stop the hurt, just lets you carry it somewhere else. He held them, barely felt the weight. Thank you. Don't thank me. Eat your food before it burns. Week 3 hit hard. The initial burst of planting was done, but now came the maintenance, checking irrigation, pulling the weeds that came up fast after rain, making sure the turnips weren't getting choked by competing growth. Work from can see to can't see, as Eleanor used to say. Dawn until full dark every day, no exceptions. Marcus's hands had gone through the full cycle, soft to blistered to bloody to calloused. The skin hardened up in places it hadn't been hard in 2 years. Muscle memory coming back like the body remembered what it was supposed to do, even if the brain had forgotten. Nara worked at that same relentless pace, favoring her left side, those broken fingers wrapped tight in brown cloth. The bruises on her face had faded from purple-black to yellow-green to finally just faint shadows. Her lip had healed crooked, giving her a permanent half-smirk that made her look like she was always on the verge of saying something sharp. They argued about everything. The furrow spacing. Too close, Nara said. Roots will compete. This is how I've always... Yeah, and how'd that work out? The compost application. Too much nitrogen burns the roots. It's worked for dying crops. Yeah, I noticed. The seed depth, the watering schedule, the strategic placement of companion plants that Nara said helped with pest control, but Marcus suspected she was making up. Everything was a negotiation, a small battle, and somehow that made it feel more real than the silent decay he'd been living in. On day 16 early morning, Marcus was checking the Northfield oats when he saw Nara in Southfield doing that thing again. Flat on her belly, face pressed to the soil, hands spread wide, completely still. He'd learned not to interrupt, just watch from a distance. After maybe 2 full minutes, she stood up, brushed off her dress, looked directly at him across 40 yards of field. Water's still moving east, faster now after the rain. Your northeast corner's gonna flood if we don't redirect the flow. How can you possibly? The smell changes, iron concentration, and the soil sounds different when water's moving underneath. Soil doesn't make sound. She looked at him with that expression that said, "You're wrong, but I'm too tired to explain why." Everything makes sound if you know how to listen. They spent the next 2 days digging a drainage channel from the northeast corner toward the natural gully that ran along the property line. Backbreaking work, moving dirt one shovelful at a time, and Marcus kept waiting for Nara to slow down, to acknowledge that her broken hands hurt, that her ribs were still healing. She never did. "You don't have to prove anything," he said on the second day, both of them filthy and exhausted. "Not proving, just doing. Your hands, my hands work. That's all that matters." Nara. She stopped digging. Looked at him with both eyes. Now the swelling had finally gone down enough for the left one to open fully. Different colors, he noticed. The right one dark brown, almost black. The left one had this amber tint, like honey held up to sunlight. He'd never seen that in a person before. "Listen, where I come from, you don't get to rest just because you're hurt. You rest when the work's done or when you're dead. Those are the options." "That why you left?" Wrong question. He knew it the second it left his mouth. Her face went flat, that blank expression sliding down like a door closing. "Didn't leave. Was sold." She went back to digging. They finished the channel by sunset. That night, Nara made soup from wild onions she'd found near the creek, herbs from the garden patch, and the last of the dried venison Marcus had been saving. It tasted better than anything he'd eaten in months. "Where'd you learn to cook?" he asked. "Grandmother. She said a woman who can heal and can't cook is only half useful." "Your grandmother sounds dead. 5 years now." She said it matter of fact, no emotion, just information. But her hand tightened on the spoon knuckles, going white under the scarred skin. "She the one taught you about the plants, the healing?" "Yeah, bone knit for breaks, fever wort for infection, blood moss for..." She stopped. "Doesn't matter now." "Why not?" "Because I'm not a healer anymore. I'm whatever the Bureau says I am, agricultural bride class. Good for planting and pulling weeds and not much else." Marcus set down his bowl. "That's not what I see." "No, I see someone who saved a field that was dead, who reads soil like other people read books, who works harder than any 3 men I've known." She was quiet for a long moment. "You see what you need to see. That's different from what is." But something in her voice had softened, just a little, just enough. Week 3 ended with the letter. It came on a Tuesday, delivered by the postal rider, a kid named Thomas, who took his job with inappropriate seriousness for someone who was maybe 17. He handed over the envelope, waited for his 2-cent tip, wrote off. Marcus knew what it was before he opened it. Official paper. Vincent Aldrich's letterhead, the kind that meant lawyers and consequences. He read it standing in the yard, Nara on the porch, sharpening the scythe. The sound of blade on stone, rhythmic and patient, the soundtrack to bad news. "Mr. Thornwell, outstanding balance $380, payment due 9 weeks from March 15th, date of original arrangement. This letter serves as official notice, 6 weeks remain. Failure to pay will result in property foreclosure per territorial law. This is non-negotiable. Vincent Aldrich, merchant and creditor." 6 weeks. He did the math in his head. Turnips needed 8 weeks minimum to mature fully. Oats needed 7. They were at week 3 now, which meant week 9 for turnips, week 8 for oats. The numbers didn't work. No amount of soil wisdom was going to speed up biology. Plants grew at the pace they grew, and time didn't negotiate. Nara appeared in the doorway, still holding the whetstone. "Bad news." Not a question. "Aldrich calling it due in 6 weeks. Turnips need 8. "Yeah." She didn't move, didn't try to fix it immediately, didn't offer false comfort. just stood there letting the reality settle. Partial harvest, she said finally. Pull the early greens turnip leaves, anything marketable before the roots finish. Won't get 380, but might buy time. Aldrich doesn't sell time. Everyone sells time. Price just depends who's asking. Marcus looked at the letter again like the words might change if he stared hard enough. Even if we harvest perfect, even if everything comes in ideal after I pay him, there's nothing left. No money for next year. No savings for winter. We survive this debt, then starve. Different timeline and same ending. So we find money elsewhere. Where I can make medicine sell it in Millbrook. His voice came out harsher than intended. Where they ignore you. Where they doubled the flower price because I walked in next to a dust walker. Her expression didn't change, but something behind the eyes shifted, that amber-tinted left eye going dark. Then somewhere else. Where Nara next town's 3 days on horseback. So ride 3 days. On what horse Brick can barely pull the plow? Marcus pushed away from the fence post. Stop. Please, just stop. Stop what? Planning, fixing. Acting like every problem has a solution if we just work harder and think smarter. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush. Some things don't fix, he said. Some things break and stay broken. All the turnips and soil reading in the world doesn't change that this farm was dying before you got here, and it'll keep dying after. He stopped. The words hung there half-finished, showing their shape. After what? Her voice came out careful, controlled. After I sell it, or Aldrich takes it, or I walk away from all of it, the fields, the debt, this whole exhausting machine where I've been losing for 2 straight years. She turned those words over, slowly examining them. Let it go. That's what you mean. Accept reality, yeah. I know running, Marcus. She stepped closer. I've done it. Running is what happens when you've exhausted every option and all that's left is your feet. She moved into the space between them. You haven't exhausted anything. You tried grief, tried not caring, tried whiskey and isolation and letting land rot because the woman who cared about it died. Her voice stayed level, but something underneath was fracturing. And now things are actually growing. Now something's alive on this land for the first time in 2 years. And you want to run. Nara. Because growing things means caring about them. And caring means someone might rip them away. Better to quit first. Better to control the ending. You don't. I have the right exactly. Her voice cracked, just barely. A branch carrying too much weight, that first small sound before breaking. You think you're the only one who knows what it costs to care? I had my hands broken twice for trying to heal people. Twice. And I kept planting because that's what you do when something matters. She was breathing hard now, control slipping. The soil remembers Marcus. Third time. This time it carried everything, 2 years of dead crops, her broken fingers, a whole tribe that had punished her for carrying a man, punishing his farm for the same reason. It remembers what you did to it, but it also remembers what you planted. She held his gaze. So which one do you want it to grow? The silence stretched. Outside, wind moved through the oat field. Inside, 2 people stood in a kitchen that smelled like honest work and the terrible weight of choosing what comes next. Marcus stood at the window for a long time after she went back to the porch. The sound of the scythe on stone resumed. Steady, patient, someone who planned to be there tomorrow whether he was or not. He didn't sell the farm, didn't announce it, didn't make a speech, just walked out the next morning, picked up an axe, started work on the fence repair. Nara looked at him once, went back to her row. That was enough. The days blurred after that. Work and worry and the slow miracle of things growing when given what they need. The turnip leaves came in thick and dark green edible, even before the roots finished. The oats stood taller, filling out that particular shade of gold that meant they were close. Wyatt came by on day 23. Didn't dismount, just sat his horse at the fence looking at Southfield for what felt like 5 full minutes. Marcus? Wyatt. That Southfield looks better than when Eleanor was alive. Nara's work. I know whose work it is. He watched Nara pull water from the well. One-handed broken hand pressed to her ribs bucket, coming up full and heavy. World's funny sometimes. Sends you exactly what you need in a package you'd never choose. Ain't funny. No, true things usually aren't. He rode off. Market day came on Thursday of week 4. Marcus needed flour. The stores were critically low. Wire for the fence repair. Seeds for a second planting. Nara wanted to try in the irrigation zone. And they both knew what going to town meant. The stares, the whispers, the casual cruelty of people who'd decided you'd stepped outside acceptable bounds. I'm coming, Nara said when he was hitching Brick to the wagon. That's a bad idea. Need wire, you'll pick wrong. Nara, humans always pick wrong gauge, every time. No winning that one. The ride took 2 hours. Brick at his usual pace somewhere between reluctant and protesting. Dust rising behind them. Nara sat beside him on the bench, same brown dress, hands wrapped in cloth. She tried to tie her hair back, but it was still too short, kept falling forward. The bruises had faded, but the scars remained. The crooked lip, the slight asymmetry where her jaw had healed wrong. The permanent groove on her wrist where the iron band had sat for months. Every person in Millbrook tracked them as they came down Main Street. 300 people in a valley that didn't keep secrets, and here came Marcus Thornwell with a dustwalker woman sitting right beside him, like it was normal, like it was acceptable, like he didn't care what anyone thought. Because he didn't, not anymore. The feed merchant Vernon Steele wouldn't make eye contact, just weighed the flour, named a price that was double what it should be, took Marcus's money. Supply issues, he muttered. The blacksmith Corbin was better. Pulled out wire samples, let Nara inspect them without comment. When she picked one, he cut it, wrapped it, named a fair price. 3 cents. Small mercy. They were loading the wagon when Miriam Baker appeared. She had radar for this kind of thing, an unholy ability to materialize exactly when you least wanted company. Marcus, it's been weeks. Been busy. Her eyes slid to Nara, cataloging, judging, filing away for later distribution. Your companion. The pause before that word was deliberate. She works the farm, Marcus said. Works. Miriam tasted the word like spoiled milk. People are talking, you know. Yeah, Miriam, that's what people do. About propriety, about whether it's right, a white man and a dustwalker woman out there alone. We're growing turnips. If that's improper, take it up with the Bureau. Her smile tightened. She left already composing the story she'd tell. At the fountain near the end of Main Street, they stopped to water Brick. Old limestone built when Millbrook had ambitions of being more than it was. A child was there, maybe 5, 6 at most. Blonde hair stuck to his forehead with sweat, holding a tin cup. He was drinking when he saw Nara. He stopped, cup halfway to his mouth, staring up at her 6 feet tall, gray-weathered skin face marked with fading violence. And then he said it. Monster. Not mean, that was the thing. Not cruel, just honest. 5-year-old honesty, saying out loud what every adult was thinking but had learned to hide. Defining what he'd been taught to see. Nara's broken hand clenched. The cloth wrapping went tight, but her face stayed blank. That patient calculator expression, measuring exactly how bad this was, how bad it would get. The mother rushed over, young woman, face flushed red. I'm so sorry, She directed it at Marcus. Not at Nara, at Marcus. Like Nara was furniture. Like things can't accept apologies, can't register. Hurt, can't carry words home and turn them over in the dark. The woman grabbed her son, pulled him away, murmuring corrections that wouldn't stick because the lesson was already taught. Marcus started to say something, stopped. What was there to say? They rode home in silence. 2 hours of wagon wheels and wind, and neither saying a word. At the gate, Nara spoke. That's how it'll be. Every time, every town. Her voice was quiet, factual. If me being here costs more than I'm worth, it doesn't. You don't know that yet. I know Southfield sprouted for first time in 2 years. I know Northfield might work because you figured the water out. I know that child was wrong. She looked at him for a long moment. Child wasn't wrong. Child learned something. Results the same. She took the wire walk to the south fence, worked until dark came down, so complete she couldn't see her hands. That night, they sat on the porch in silence. Marcus had made soup, Nara had added wild mint, and something else he didn't recognize. It tasted like it had purpose. Your hands, he said after a while. First time was 19. Yeah. What exactly happened? She set her bowl down. Looked at her fingers in the lamplight, the way they bent wrong, the scars where they'd broken and healed crooked. Was planting blood moss in the eastern grove. Secret at night. Someone saw. Told the chief. She flexed them slowly. Called the whole tribe to witness. Made an example. This is what happens when you touch soil that isn't yours to touch, when you practice old ways the new chief has forbidden. He broke them himself. Had his war captain do it. Thraken, my brother. The word landed heavy. Your brother. Yeah. And the second time, 2 years later, I'd healed enough to plan again. Couldn't help it. People were sick, children especially. Planted feverwort and bone knit in the northern valley. Someone talked again. She picked up the bowl, took another bite. This time the chief waited. Let them heal completely. Wanted me to think maybe I'd learn. Then called another gathering. Had Thraken break them again. Same bones, same places. Said repetition teaches better than novelty. Marcus felt something hot and sharp in his chest. That's why the Bureau, third time I planted, chief decided breaking wasn't enough. Sold me to the Bureau as punishment. Lower than killing, lower than exile. Being property of humans, that's the worst thing that can happen to a dustwalker. She looked at him with both eyes, now the amber-tinted left one catching light different from the right. But here's what he didn't understand. I don't care about shame, I care about planting. So if the price of putting seeds in ground is being called the lowest thing that exists, fine. I'll be the lowest thing. She went back to eating, as long as I get to plant. They sat in silence after that, the kind that doesn't need filling. Just two people who'd both lost things, both been broken, both decided to keep going anyway. Morning of week 5. Marcus was checking irrigation when he heard it, hoofbeats fast coming from the east road. 3 riders crested the hill. His stomach dropped. He walked quickly back to the house. Nara was in the yard hanging cloth to dry. She looked up, saw his face turn toward the sound. The riders came into view. Not regular horses, war horses. Tribal mounts, tall and heavy-muscled, bred for endurance and intimidation. The riders stopped at the property line, not inside the fence, at the boundary. Official business. Nara walked out to meet them, steady, feet planted, chin up. That same expression she'd worn when she stepped off the wagon, blank patient, measuring exactly how bad this was about to get. Marcus grabbed the pitchfork from the barn, a pitchfork against 3 tribal warriors. Brilliant planning, but it was what he had. The lead rider dismounted. Huge man, 6'1", maybe 6'2", twice Nara's width. Shoulders like bridge supports. Face like hers, same jaw, same cheekbones. Family features. Deep voice you felt in your teeth. You look thin. Nara stopped 10 feet away. You look like a man who rode 3 days to tell me that. Rode 3 days because the chief wants you back. He pulled a scroll from his belt. Official seal, leather binding. Summons, tribal law. You're required to return. Tribe sold me. Tribe punished you. There's a difference. Nara raised her hands, fingers pointing 5 different wrong directions. Doesn't track. His eyes went to her hands. Something crossed his face, fast, painful, quickly hidden. Recognition. Regret, maybe. The look of someone who'd known this was coming and dreaded it anyway. Chief changed his mind about your punishment. Changed his mind how Alliance needs a body, your body, for the marriage you refused. The words fell like stones. So it was never about the herbs. Nara. Never about healing, about me saying no. Silence. Horses shifting. Wind through the oat field, making it ripple like water. Come home. His voice dropped. Not ordering, asking. Chief won't blind you, I convinced him. Blinding. They'd been discussing blinding her, taking her eyes for touching soil, for saying no, for existing wrong. You convinced him to sell me to whites instead. I saved your life. You saved my eyes. Life ended when he decided I was something to trade. She stepped forward. I'm not going. Not your choice. When tribal law says Kashina, the word hit like a physical blow. Every warrior there felt it. Ancient law, 40 years since anyone invoked it, and here it was spoken out loud in a white man's field. I know. Grandmother told me. Old laws still stand. Her brother had to be. Thraken stared at her. You do this, you lose everything. Tribal name, protection. You become Vasha. Clanless. No tribe will take you, no settlement will trade with you. Everyone who knew your name, you are dead to them. I know. For this, he gestured at the farm at Marcus with his pathetic pitchfork. You sacrifice everything for this. Nara's voice didn't waver. This is the first place I can put things in ground without someone breaking my hands. She held his gaze. So yes, for this. Thraken looked at her. Really looked. At what was behind the scars, behind the damage, behind 2 years of being called the lowest thing a person could be. He extended his hand to her wrist, to the iron band. Nara extended her arm. He gripped the metal with both hands, muscles standing out like cables, knuckles white. He twisted. The band resisted, screamed, metal protesting, refusing to let go. Then crack, sharp, final. two pieces falling to the mud with small splashes. Thracken's face did something complicated. Stone fracturing, showing what was underneath for just a second. You are Vasha. I have no sister. Nara met his eyes. I have a brother. You can't say that anymore. The words sat between them like corpses. He stood there another moment, then spoke softer. Grow your herbs, Nara. Grow your turnips. Live your life connected to soil. Quieter still. Be well. He mounted. The three riders turned east. The sound faded slowly, taking a long time to disappear completely. The silence after was the silence of amputation, of something that used to be connected now just gone. Empty space resonating like a wound. Nara stood looking at two pieces of iron in the mud. Didn't cry. Didn't collapse. Just stood there breathing. Marcus crossed the yard, stood beside her. You okay, man? No. Simple? Honest? What do you needed? Time? And we finished south fence before dark. They fixed the fence as the sun went down. Didn't talk about it. Just worked until the light failed and the fence stood solid. When they finished, Nara picked up the broken iron pieces, wrapped them in cloth, put them in her bundle. Some things you can't throw away. Some things you carry because forgetting costs more than remembering. 3 days after the warriors came, Marcus rode to Millbrook. Not for supplies, for something harder. He went straight to Vincent Aldrich's office. The merchant was at his desk, ledgers spread out, columns of numbers that either balanced or didn't. Mr. Thornwell, Mr. Aldrich. Marcus set money on the desk. 42 silver dollars in coin and small bills. It looked pathetic there, a tiny pile against massive debt. Payment on account. Aldrich looked at the money, at Marcus. Something shifted in his expression, not sympathy, but maybe recognition. One man who'd fought acknowledging another doing the same. Letter said 6 weeks, full payment. Letter said payment due 9 weeks from March 15. We're at week 5. 4 weeks remain. Aldrich's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Semantics. Law. They stared at each other. Outside, Millbrook conducted its Thursday business. You're not going to make 380, Aldrich said finally. Even if every turnip comes, perfect math doesn't work. Probably not. So what's the play? Why pay me $42 when you know it won't save the farm? Marcus thought about Nara reading soil like scripture. Broken hands that kept planting. A woman who'd given up her entire people for the right to put seeds in ground. Because it's $42 I didn't have yesterday. Maybe tomorrow I'll have 42 more. Maybe that still won't be enough, but at least I'll know I fought instead of just laying down. Aldrich was quiet. Then he picked up the money, counted it, made a notation. 4 more weeks. After that, I call it regardless. That's more than the letter said. Letters not sit it here looking at a man who finally decided to fight. Marcus rode home lighter. Not free debt was still debt, but lighter. Nara was in Southfield checking turnip progress. Looked up when she heard the wagon. How'd it go? $42. Aldrich gave us 4 more weeks. Something like relief crossed her face. 4 weeks. Turnips ready in 3. We can make that. Maybe. We will. She said it with absolute certainty. Someone who'd decided how the story ended and would make reality accommodate. The next 3 weeks blurred. Work from dawn until you couldn't see, checking plants, timing irrigation, making sure everything got what it needed when it needed it. Nara taught him things about farming he'd never known. How to read soil moisture 3 inches down just by touching the surface. How to time water so plants got it at root depth instead of losing it to evaporation. Which weeds competed and which ones helped by bringing up nutrients from deeper layers. They worked side by side. Marcus's hands developed new calluses. His back stopped screaming, settled into dull ache that meant muscles adapting. Nara's broken fingers got stronger, still crooked, still wrong, but functional. On Tuesday evening of week 7, something changed. Marcus stood looking at Eleanor's bedroom door, the door he hadn't opened in 2 years. He'd oiled the cedar chest through the crack, maintained it without entering, kept her things preserved in amber, while he rotted outside. He put his hand on the doorknob, turned it. The door opened. Inside, everything waited. Her dresses hanging in the wardrobe, still smelling faintly of the lavender she'd sewn into sachets. Her books stacked on the nightstand, farming almanacs, a novel she'd been reading, a journal with her handwriting filling pages. The wooden combs she'd carved that winter when snow kept them inside. The quilt spread across the bed, half-finished needles still stuck through fabric like she'd just set it down. Marcus sat on the bed, the mattress creaked. Same sound it had made for 15 years every night, 2 people settling in. He opened the cedar chest. Inside, more clothes folded careful, a shawl her mother had made, letters tied with ribbon. The dried flowers from their wedding pressed flat between pages of the family Bible. He didn't take anything out, just sat there, breathing it in, cedar and lavender and old cloth, the smell of a life that ended without permission. He picked up her journal, opened to the last entry. March 10th, 1934. Fever worse today. Marcus says I should rest, but there's planting to be done. The south field needs attention, dead root coming back stronger this year. Told him about the water table shifting, showed him where to plant instead. If I don't make it, and we both know I might not tell Marcus this, the soil remembers what you plant in it. Every kindness, every wound, it keeps the record. Nothing is lost. Plant good things, my love. Plant good things. The words blurred. Marcus realized he was crying for the first time in 2 years. Not the dry, hollow grief that had filled him before, but actual tears, hot and clean, running down his face and dripping onto the page. He sat there holding the journal, crying in a way he hadn't let himself cry since they'd lowered her into the ground. Great heaving sobs that shook his shoulders, sound tearing out of his throat like something physical being pulled loose. Outside the door, quiet footsteps. Then stillness. Nara hearing him, giving him space. Respecting what he needed to do alone. He cried until he was empty, until there was nothing left except the exhausted peace that comes after something long held finally releases. When he came out, eyes red and face wet, Nara was at the stove, making tea. She glanced at him, saw everything, said nothing. Just poured 2 cups to set them on the table. They sat in silence. The good kind. After a while, Marcus spoke. Her last journal entry, she wrote about the soil remembering. Nara wrapped her broken hands around her cup. Smart woman. Yeah. More silence. Comfortable now. 2 people who'd both lost things, both been broken, both learned that grief doesn't end, just moves to where you can carry it. Thank you, Marcus said. For what? The herbs, the ashkaphora, for knowing what I needed before I did. She almost smiled. That crooked half smirk, her torn lip allowed. Stick to field work. He actually laughed. First real laugh in 2 years. It felt strange in his chest, rusty, but good. Like a muscle that had atrophied, finally remembering what it was for. Week 8 arrived with morning light that turned everything gold. Harvest time. The turnips were ready. Roots, swollen, leaves still healthy but yellowing at the tips the way they do when the plants put everything underground. The oats stood golden and dry, making that rattling sound that meant cut now or lose them to weather. They worked 3 straight days. Marcus cutting oats, while Nara pulled turnips, shaking dirt loose, stacking them in crates. Then switching Nara cutting while Marcus bundled and hauled. Both of them loading the wagon, making the trip to Millbrook, selling what they could, coming back for more. The market was what it was. Some vendors still turned their backs, some charged premium prices. But others, enough others, bought fair. The turnips were good, undeniably good, and quality had a way of overcoming prejudice when money was involved. By Saturday, they had it all in. Every turnip, every oat stalk, every herb from the garden. The field stood empty, but the good kind of empty. The kind that meant completion instead of abandonment. That night, Marcus spread the money on the kitchen table. Bills and coins sorted by denomination. The weight of 3 weeks' brutal labor translated to silver and paper. He counted twice. $328, 52 short. He stared at the piles, hoping they'd multiply. They didn't. Nara stood in the doorway. How much? 328. How short? 52. She nodded slowly. Expected this. Already knew. Wait here. She went to her bundle, the one she'd carried off the wagon 9 weeks ago, unwrapped it on the table. Inside the broken iron pieces, spare cloth, a small leather pouch sewn shut with careful stitches. She opened it. Coins spilled out, old tribal currency mixed with territorial silver. She counted them. $63, more than enough to cover the gap. Nara, I can't. You can. This is everything you have. She looked at him with those mismatched eyes, dark brown and amber tinted, both clear and certain. No, what I have is a place where I can plant without someone breaking my hands. What I have is a man who didn't send me back when he could have. What I have is 3 meals a day and a roof and soil that actually grows what I put in it. She pushed the coins toward him. That's worth more than $63. Marcus looked at the money, at her crooked fingers resting on the table, at her face, scars healed, expression open. Where'd you get this tribal currency from before? When they took me to the bureau, I sewed it into the hem of my dress. They checked everything but the hems. Figured I'd need it someday. She paused. Today's that day. The soil remembers what you plant, she said quietly. Fourth time, different meaning than all the others. We planted this together, so we harvest together. Sunday morning, Marcus rode to Millbrook, $391 in the saddlebag. More than the debt, not much more, but enough. Vincent Aldrich was in his office, waiting. Marcus set the money on the desk. $380 plus $11 interest. Aldrich counted slowly, made notations. Finally looked up. Paid in full. He pulled out a paper, signed it, stamped it. Clear title. Farm's yours free and clear, Mr. Thornwell. Marcus took the paper. It felt heavier than it should. The Dustwalker woman, Aldrich said as Marcus was leaving. She's the one figured out how to make that land produce again. Yeah. You keeping her on? Marcus looked at him. She's not hired help. She's partner seemed wrong. Friends seemed small. Family seemed presumptuous. She's staying. Aldrich nodded. Good. We need more people who know how to read land proper. Dust Bowl's teaching us that, if nothing else. Marcus rode home at sunset. Light turned everything orange and gold, shadows stretching long. Empty fields that would be planted again come spring. Nara was on the porch, mending the east fence, dirt on her dresswood, shavings in her hair. Well, he held up the paper. Paid in full. Farm's ours. She nodded. Something in her face relaxed. Tension she'd been carrying since day one finally letting go. Ours, she repeated. Yeah. They stood there as the sun finished setting. Sky going purple, then pink, then dark blue. Stars appearing one by one. What do we plant next? Marcus asked. Spring wheat in the north, another turnip rotation in the south, maybe potatoes by the creek. She listed them like she'd already planned it, like she'd been thinking about next year since before this year finished. Sounds good. They sat on the porch steps as full dark came. Farm sounds settling into night, animals bedding down, wind shifting to evening patterns. The particular quiet that means everything's where it should be. Nara. Yeah. Thank you for not letting me quit, for seeing something in this land I couldn't see. Soil was always good, just needed reminding. Not talking about the soil. She looked at him, that direct look, no performance, no pretense. I know. They sat until the cold drove them inside. Over the next days, they fell into new rhythms. Not employer and worker, not even quite friends, though that was closer. Something else. Two people who'd saved each other in ways that didn't have names yet. Marcus opened Eleanor's room fully, left the door open during the day. Sometimes went in there to sit, to remember, to let himself feel what he'd been avoiding for 2 years. The grief moved like Nara had said it would, didn't end, just relocated to somewhere he could carry it. Nara planted a small garden near the house. Healing herbs, the ones her grandmother had taught her, bone knit and feverwort and blood moss. Marcus asked if she was worried about anyone seeing. Let them see, not hiding anymore. He helped her build raised beds, hauled soil, learned the names of plants and what they healed. She taught him carefully, patiently, the way her grandmother must have taught her. The farm healed too, slowly. Week by week, the soil remembered what it was supposed to do. The fields that had been dying for 2 years came back to life, not all at once, but steadily. And if people in Millbrook talked, and they did constantly, Marcus found he didn't care. Let them talk. He had work to do. 40 years later. Marcus Thornwell died on a Tuesday morning in March. Heart gave out while he was in the north field checking spring wheat shoots. They found him with his coffee cup still in his hand, looking at green things growing. He was 75. The funeral was in Millbrook. Half the county showed up. Wyatt gave the eulogy he'd outlived all expectations, made it to 98 somehow. Told stories about a man who'd lost everything and learned to fight for it. About soil that remembers and second chances, and asking for help when you need it. After the service, a woman approached the grave. Tall, gray-haired, maybe late 60s, walking with a cane but moving steady. She wore a practical dress, well-made, but not showy. The kind of thing you wore when you had money but didn't need to prove it. She stood at the grave for a long time, not saying anything, just looking at fresh-turned earth. Marcus's nephew, a distant cousin's son who'd inherited the farm, approached cautiously. Did you know him? Long time ago? Her voice was rough, deep in her chest. He noticed her hands, fingers crooked, bent in directions they shouldn't go. Old injuries healed wrong but functional. I'm sorry for your loss. He was a good man. Did you work for him? With him. There's a difference, Wemaher. She reached into her bag, pulled out a cloth bundle, handed it to him. These are for the farm. Plant them in spring. Dustwalker turnips. Roots go deep, hold soil when dry years come. The nephew looked confused. I don't understand. She smiled, crooked, pulled wrong by old scars but genuine. He will. She pointed to the grave. The soil remembers what you plant. He taught me that, or I taught him. Hard to remember which way it went now. She turned to leave, paused. A letter's coming from the agricultural college back east. They want to buy the cultivation technique he developed, the furrow method. Tell them yes, but the money goes to teaching young farmers. That's what he would have wanted. How do you know? She looked at him with eyes that had seen things survived, things outlasted things that should have broken her. One dark brown, one amber tinted, both clear. Because I knew him when he didn't want anything except to stop hurting. And I watched him learn to want something else, to want to grow things, to want to leave something that mattered. What's your name? Doesn't matter now. She walked away, cane tapping on the path, and the nephew watched her go. This tall old woman with broken hands and a straight spine disappearing into the evening. He opened the cloth bundle. Seeds, and a note in careful script written by someone who'd learned to write despite fingers that didn't work right. Marcus, 40 years. Couldn't bring myself to come back while you were alive. Too many memories, too much weight. But I thought about it every spring. Built a school in the Eastern Territory, teaching the old ways. Bone-knit, fever-wart blood, moss. 300 students now. None of them get punished for healing. Your Eleanor was right. The soil remembers what you plant. We planted freedom. For both of us. Thank you for teaching me that home isn't a place. It's choosing to stay and fight when running would be easier. Plant these in spring. Roots go deep. Hold soil when storms come. The land will remember you. I promise that, Nara. The nephew stood there as the sun went down, as people filtered away, as Millbrook Valley settled into evening. He looked at the seeds, at the crooked handwriting, at the signature that meant nothing to him, but clearly meant everything to the old woman with broken hands. He planted them that spring. Every single one. And they grew the way she'd said, deep roots holding soil surviving when other crops failed. Over years, the seeds spread. Other farmers started planting them. People called them Thornwell turnips. But some old-timers, the ones who remembered, they had another name. They called them remembering roots, because the soil remembers what you plant in it. Every kindness, every wound, every choice to stay when leaving would be easier. Every broken-handed woman who kept planting anyway. Every broken-hearted man who learned to try again. The soil keeps it all. Nothing is lost. And 40 years after Nara Vashka stepped off a bureau wagon with bruises on her face and iron on her wrist, the land she'd saved was still growing things. Still remembering. Still alive.